Have you ever noticed how you become a completely different person the moment you pull into your parents' driveway? In your daily life, you might be a manager of 50 people, a creative soul with a complex inner life, or a traveler who has changed every one of their political views. But the second you step through that front door, you feel a strange, heavy shrinking. Suddenly, you're 18 again, or 12. You find yourself biting your tongue, hiding your newest interests, and laughing at jokes that stopped being funny a decade ago. Then, a few days later, you're sitting in a coffee shop or an airport terminal, and you strike up a conversation with a complete stranger. Within 20 minutes, you've told them things your own mother doesn't know. You've shared your real fears, your actual ambitions, and the truth about how you see the world. Why is it easier to be honest with someone whose name you don't even know than with the people who raised you? It's not because you don't love them, and it's not because you're a liar. The reason is far more clinical, and it's wired into the very architecture of your brain. Today, we're looking at the role trap, the psychological prison that keeps us from growing in the eyes of those who knew us first. This experience is what psychologists call extreme compartmentalization of the self. It feels like living in two different timelines. In one timeline, your outside life, you are evolving. You are learning, failing, and rebuilding. In the other timeline, the family life, you are a museum exhibit. You are frozen in the version of you that was most convenient or most recognizable to your family unit years ago. Think about the last time you were at a family dinner. Perhaps you wanted to mention a new philosophy you've been reading about, or a career change you're considering, but you felt a physical constriction in your throat. You knew instinctively that if you spoke your truth, the vibe would shift. There would be a heavy silence, or worse, a patronizing smile. That's just you being the rebellious one again, they might say. Or, you've always been so dramatic. In that moment, your family isn't seeing you. They are seeing the role they assigned to you 20 years ago. This creates a profound sense of invisible loneliness. You are physically present, but your actual self is nowhere to be found. This is why we find such relief in strangers. A stranger has no legacy version of you stored in their head. They don't have a file labeled the quiet one or the problem child.
When you speak to a stranger, you are writing on a blank slate. For the first time in a long time, you feel the lightness of being seen for who you are now, rather than who you were then. But why does the brain find it so terrifying to update the family file? Why does your identity feel like it has to break just to stay in the room?
Before we look at the mechanics, you need to understand one thing. You are not fake for doing this. The version of you that stays quiet at Christmas is not a betrayal of the real you. It is a sophisticated survival strategy. As humans, our primary biological drive isn't happiness, it's belonging. In the classic book, The Drama of the Gifted Child, Alice Miller explores how children instinctively adapt their personalities to ensure they are loved and needed by their parents. If your family system required you to be the clown to alleviate tension, you became the clown. If it required you to be the invisible one so as not to cause trouble, you became invisible. These weren't choices, they were adaptations. The problem is that even as adults, our nervous systems still treat the family dynamic as our primary tribe. To change your role is to threaten the stability of that tribe, and the brain perceives a threat to the tribe as a threat to your very survival. You aren't being dishonest, you are being protective. You are protecting the peace of the group, and you are protecting the version of yourself that still wants to be accepted.
To understand why this happens, we have to look at systemic consistency theory. Imagine your family as a mobile hanging from a ceiling. Each person is a weight. If one weight suddenly doubles in size or moves to a different branch, the entire mobile starts to shake and tilt. The other weights, your parents or siblings, will instinctively pull back or shift their positions to stop the shaking. In psychology, this is called homeostasis. The family system wants to stay the same, even if the same is unhealthy or outdated. When you show up as your evolved self, you're essentially telling the mobile to shake. This triggers a reaction in your family's brains called cognitive dissonance. They have a mental map of you. If you provide information that doesn't fit that map, their brains experience actual physical discomfort. To resolve that discomfort, they will often do one of two things. First, they might ignore the new information, the "oh, you're just going through a phase" response. Second, they might shame you back into your old role. But there is a second mechanism at play within you, the spotlight effect. In a new environment, you feel anonymous, but in a family environment, you feel the spotlight. You feel that every word you say is being compared to your history. If you say, "I'm interested in meditation," you hear the echoes of your father laughing at a similar topic when you were 10. Your brain performs a preemptive strike. To avoid the pain of being misunderstood, your subconscious mind gates your personality. It shuts down the new sectors of your identity and reroutes your behavior through the old, safe neural pathways of your childhood. This is why you feel more honest with a stranger. With a stranger, there is no homeostasis to maintain. There is no mobile to shake. The brain feels safe to be authentic because the cost of being wrong is zero.
So, how do we stop living these fragmented lives? How do we begin to merge the stranger honest self with the family role self? It requires a process called differentiation of self, a concept pioneered by psychiatrist Murray Bowen. Here is a 4-step framework to help you navigate the role trap. Step 1, identify the legacy label. Before your next family interaction, ask yourself, what was my job in this house? Were you the caretaker, the scapegoat, the golden child, or the neutral observer? Labeling the role moves it from your subconscious to your conscious mind. Once you see the costume you've been wearing, it becomes a choice rather than a reflex. Step 2, practice low-stakes honesty. Don't start by announcing a total life transformation. Instead, share one small, authentic preference that contradicts your old role. If they suggest a restaurant you've always hated but pretended to like, say, "Actually, I've realized that place doesn't really sit well with me anymore. Could we try something else?" This is systematic desensitization. You are teaching your family's mental map that you can change without the world ending. Step 3, take the neutral observer stance. When a family member tries to pull you back into your old role, perhaps by bringing up an embarrassing story from a decade ago, respond with curiosity rather than defensiveness. Use phrases like, "It's interesting you remember it that way," or "I definitely used to be like that, but I've changed a lot since then." This prevents emotional reactivity. When you don't take the bait, you refuse to provide the weight needed to keep the old family mobile in its rigid position. Step 4. Bridge the gap with third-party truths. Sometimes it's easier to talk about your growth through the lens of books or mentors. Instead of saying, "I feel lonely," say, "I was reading this book by Dr. Gabor Mate about how we hide our authenticity to keep our attachments, and it really made me think about how I show up here." This moves the conversation from your opinion versus their memory to a neutral intellectual exploration. If you take only one thing away from this, let it be the 2-map model. Think of your identity as a map. When you are with strangers, you are using a GPS that updates in real time. It sees the roads that are closed, the new buildings, and the detours you've taken. But when you are with family, you are often handed a paper map from 1995. The roads have changed, the landscape is different, but the map stays the same. The frustration you feel isn't because the map is wrong, it's because it's an antique.
You don't need to burn the old map. You just need to stop trying to drive your modern life using its directions. As you grow, you will realize that being more honest with strangers was actually a training ground. Those strangers were mirrors, showing you that your new identity is valid, even if your family isn't ready to see it yet. Eventually, the goal isn't to make your family understand you perfectly. The goal is to become so comfortable with your own updated map that you no longer need their permission to.
It is a strange irony of the human condition that we often feel the most invisible among the people who have looked at us the longest. But remember, their inability to see your growth is not a reflection of your reality. It is a reflection of their memory. You are not the version of you that lives in their heads. You are the person who is listening to this right now. The person who has survived things they don't know about. The person who has dreams they haven't heard. The next time you find yourself shrinking in that roll trap, take a deep breath. Remember that you are allowed to be a stranger to your past. You are allowed to be new. And if you can be honest with a person you just met, you already have the courage you need. You're just waiting for the right audience. But perhaps the most important audience you'll ever have is just you. Take care of your mind. Try to find the pattern of your mind with us. We are Patterned Self.